Some books don't just take you on a journey, they make you want to book a flight. I've always loved stories that transport me, but these are the ones that actually made me want to pack my bags, which has landed me here in Costa Rica, which I am loving. We're going to start with books that ignited my wanderlust in a general way. These are the things that reminded me how fun adventuring is. First up, we have to talk about one of my favorite series of all time, which is The Monk and the Robot duology. The first one is A Psalm for the Wild Belt. We're following a monk and a robot as they kind of go through this journey together. There's a lot of travel happening in this book. There's also a lot of self-reflection. And our main character, Dex, the tea monk, really goes on this journey of travel as a way to go on a journey of self-reflection and figure out what they want out of life and what their purpose is. Our robot also has some things to work out. The robot wants to know what humans need. The robot ends up traveling with Dex to all of these different places to meet all of these different people and find out what it is that they need and find out how it, as a robot, can help these people in a way that feels aligned with what the robot also wants to do and what's good for their society as well. I love this book because it's exactly why I want to travel, and the things that I love about traveling is meeting other people and finding out how I can impact their lives and they always impact my life. And also, it's this journey of self-reflection and doing hard things and experiencing new things, and meeting other people always helps me learn more about myself. Next up, we have The Alchemist. This is a story about finding your personal legend, and it is the story that I always think that I'm too good for. Like, I always think that my brain is too big for this book. I always think I've matured past needing this book. I've read it about 4 times now, and each time I get something new out of it. There's a delicious little travel story that is at the center of this book, and it's about needing to go far in order to find things that were there all along. Our main character is traveling through a lot of different places, trying to fulfill his personal legend. It's got a lot to say about purpose and why travel is so important and why new experiences are so important, and I think I'm about due for a reread. This next one is a cute little middle grade graphic novel series. The first book is called The Girl and the Galdurian, and they are incredible. They're my favorite graphic novels of all time. I love them because they are so much about adventuring. We have our girl and our Galdurian. The Galdurian is this like ancient golden retriever knight type character, and he is so eager to go places and do things, and our other main character is very anxious, and she's trying to fight through this anxiety because they're looking for her grandfather, the pig wizard. And they also have to save the world in the process. It's a really sweet story, and it's just filled with adventure. There's a cat that comes with them on all of their adventures, and I'm now desperate to find my own adventure cat to take with me on my travels. Switching tones a little bit to Station 11, this is an apocalypse story. It happens after a global pandemic. This book is about a troupe of traveling Shakespeare performers who go and travel this landscape in this caravan, and they are bringing art through Shakespeare's words to people in the apocalypse. And it really drives home the message that even in the worst of times, art is so important. That's why books are always such a big part of my journey. Whenever I travel, I am always reading on my travels, because no matter how hard my travel day was, if I get to escape into another story and I get to connect to characters, it never feels like it's too much. If I have art, which my preferred medium is through books, then I can find joy in even the most difficult of times. On that note, we have to briefly talk about The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. This book taught me that no matter what crazy adventures you get into, whether that's camping in your backyard or hitchhiking onto an alien spaceship and traveling through the galaxy, all you really need is a good cup of tea and maybe a towel, but definitely a cup of tea. I have to quickly shout out Howl's Moving Castle and all of the Studio Ghibli films. I've only read one of the books, and that's Howl's Moving Castle, which I loved, but I really want to get to Kiki's Delivery Service soon, because that idea of this little witch going and exploring all these new places and finding where she wants to live is really hitting home for me right now, and I just love that those books always have such this sense of adventure and this sense of whimsy at experiencing new things and traveling to new worlds and experiencing things that are outside the realm of your imagination, and I absolutely adore them. Rover Random is this adorable story of this little dog who gets turned into a toy dog by a wizard that he bothers, and then he has to travel to the moon, he travels under the sea, he goes all over trying to get turned back into a real dog, and if a dog that's been turned into a toy can have all these adventures, There's no reason why I can't. And there's no reason why you can't if you want to. The last book in this general section is the Wayward Children series by Shawnee McGuire. In this series, we're following different children and they all find these like doors to these worlds. It's a portal fantasy. All of these worlds are tough in some ways, but they're so perfect for these children that when they find themselves back in our world, they have a really hard time adjusting. So they go to this home for wayward children where they kind of learn to cope with that experience of finding a place that they belong in so completely and then having to leave it. I love this book because it really shows you how different circumstances can really change both how you're perceived and how you feel. If you're in a situation that is perfect for you, then you can thrive so well, even if that would be so awful for someone else. And so it's really about traveling and finding the place where you have the most ease with the life that you want to live and the person that you are. Okay, moving on to some more specifics. These are the books that really make me want to travel somewhere and study something. The first is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. This is such a cute book where we have this woman who is traveling to study these very specific fairies, and there's this other guy who's there as well, and they have this little romance that develops with it's very much like a Grumpy Sunshine situation. And I really enjoyed the beginning half of that book because it was a lot of like studying and journaling and academics, and it really made me want to go travel somewhere really far up north and study. On a similar note, A Natural History of Dragons has similar vibes. We have a woman and her new husband who are going and exploring this countryside. She is drawing these dragons and they're studying dragons, and it's very, very interesting, set in like Victorian times. And I loved that like adventurer field study vibe. Another one I had to include in this section is Braiding Sweetgrass. This is an incredible memoir. It's written by Robin Wall Kimmerer, and she is Indigenous, and she has a lot of Indigenous wisdom to share, and she also is a botanist, and she has a ton of botanist wisdom to share. So you get to see really the way that plants have touched her life, and it really made me want to go and see different types of flora and fauna that I haven't before. Once There Were Wolves is also amazing. It's a thriller. Charlotte McConaughey is incredible. I love her as an author. This book is centered around wolves. So our main character is going to study wolves in Scotland, and she is trying to reintroduce to rewild Scotland. So she's bringing wolves back. And it's just this really interesting dynamic between the wolves and the farmers and the sheep. Obviously, the wolves are going to get some of the sheep. People are endangered. It gets very intense, but at the center of it is this study of wolves and this desire to see things that humans have messed up, ecosystems that we have impacted, to see that return to a more wild state. And that is one of the reasons why I love traveling, is getting to see wild places. Speaking of wild, we're moving on to our next section, which is hiking, and I have to talk about Wild by Cheryl Strayed here. This is the book that made me decide, I've told Dan this, if he ever died, I would go and hike the PCT or the Appalachian Trail. This is Cheryl Strayed's memoir of when she did just that. You overheated, so you had to take a time out in the freezer, but we're back now. Cheryl Strayed hiked the PCT with no hiking experience or ability, and this is before the time where the internet was a reliable place to get information, and she also kind of had no access to phones. And just the way that she hiked this alone is absolutely insane to me and was so inspiring. And that is definitely my plan. If something traumatic ever happens in my life and I need to completely start over, I will be doing that, preferably with a large dog to accompany me. On the animal theme, Something Wilder reignited a passion, because I have always been a horse girl, but this book reignited my desire to take a trip with a horse. And a few days ago, I found out that my fiance not only would put up with going on a multi-day horse trail ride, but actually suggested that we go for a 2-week trip in Kyrgyzstan on horseback, which I am beyond excited about. So hopefully that comes to fruition. This is a book about horseback riding, not in Kyrgyzstan, but in the West. And there's also a treasure component to this. It's also a steamy romance. It's got a lot of things going on. All of them are lovely. Our main character works on this dude ranch, and she is organizing these trips for wealthy people to go on horseback and go on a fake treasure hunt, basically, which sounds amazing and incredible, and I would love for that to exist, and I would love to do that. Or maybe we'll go horseback riding in Kyrgyzstan. Either way, this book made me want to go travel on horseback. Books that made me really want to take a water trip Number 1, The Old Man and the Sea. I would like to also be fighting with a marlin in the middle of the ocean. This book simultaneously makes me want to be on a rickety fishing boat and also makes me want to just like do a really hard thing because the fight that he goes on with this fish is intense. The personal journey that he goes on is also very intense, and I love this book. I highly recommend the audiobook. This is actually my dad's favorite book. He recommended it to me and recommended that I listen to it, and he listened to it on tape way back in the day, and I listened to it on audiobook and loved the experience, and I thought it was really a tender moment that we both listened to the same man tell us this story. And now you can too if you want to listen to the audiobook as well. You can join me and Dave. The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi makes me want to be a pirate. We're following this woman in her 40s. She's a retired pirate. She's going on one last adventure. There's magic involved. There's adventuring involved. There's romantic relationships going on. This book is hilarious and so fun and definitely makes me want to live on a boat and travel to different islands and go on different adventures and fight sea monsters. Switching gears completely to the snow, Split Tooth reminded me how much I love snow. The descriptions of snow in this book are absolutely incredible. The book itself is not really about travel, but it just reminded me how many different feelings snow can give you. I don't really have anything more than that for you. If you want to read a book that describes snow in the perfect way, this is the book. It gets really weird. I'm just warning you. There's a lot happening in this book. It's very poetic. Snow descriptions, insane. Speaking of a snowy place, we have to talk about Minnesota because Just for the Summer is the book that made me book a trip back to Minnesota. I am traveling back to Minnesota the weekend before my wedding because I need to go back so badly, and this book really reminded me how much I love it. It's where I grew up. It's set in the summer in Minnesota. Everyone thinks of Minnesota for the cold, but Minnesota in the summer is my favorite place on this planet to be because it is so good. It's this silly, adorable, fantastic, gut-wrenching romance between these two characters. It starts with an Am I the Asshole post. It's got all the banter that you could need. My favorite thing about this is the descriptions of Minnesota and this idea of like showing someone Minnesota for the first time, and really makes me want to take Dan there so I can do the same thing that our main character in this book did and just show someone that I love this amazing place that is so special to me. And the last section we have is friend trips. I love a friend trip. There are two things that really make me want to travel to see friends. Number one is like the friend trip itself, and it's Happy Place by Emily Henry. It is the quintessential friend trip, and there's also romance going on in here, but the thing that I love the most about this book is this idea of all these friends who've known each other for so long who are coming back together to go on this trip together, and they're just getting drunk and high and spending this time together and laughing about old jokes and making new memories, and it really made me want to recreate that, which is why I'm so excited for my bachelorette that's coming up. We're gonna go stay in a cabin in the mountains and just have a really, really beautiful time with all my favorite people in one place, and this book really inspired me to do that. I wasn't sure that I was going to do a bachelorette trip, but thinking about this book just really solidified that I have to do that because it's such a magical experience to get that friend trip. And the last book we're going to talk about is The Traveling Cat Chronicles. This is the book that makes me want to go and visit each and every one of my friends because they're so scattered throughout the United States and throughout the world, and I just want to go see all of them. This book is the story of a man who has this cat and he needs to rehome his cat. And what he ends up doing in order to do that is he goes to all of these different places to visit all of these people who have impacted him and who have been in his life at one point or another. And he stays with them and they talk about the cat, and I try to see if the cat is a good fit, and it's always not a good fit. And then he goes to the next place. Warning about this book, you will sob. I made the mistake of reading it on audiobook while I was walking through my neighborhood, and I did indeed sob in public, and some people looked at me strangely, but that's what happens when you read a really good book. This book reminded me how important it is to keep in touch with people and people who have impacted you. Making the time and the effort to go and visit them when you can is so, so important, and that is a huge priority for me moving forward. I could talk about this forever, but I want to hear from you guys what books make you want to travel. I personally would love recommendations to get me even more excited about traveling, especially if you have recommendations for books that are set in Peru. And if you like this mix of travel and books, I would love for you to stick around and subscribe so we can continue hanging out. And that's it. I'll see you next week. Love you. Bye.